From what I'm hearing from some of our contacts in Europe, and frankly, especially in the Asia-Pacific region, for example, in India, I'm hearing that there's a kind of a panic. Like, wow, we thought America had our back, but I'm not sure we believe that anymore. I'm not saying this is the official position, but I'm saying that there are officials that are, and more than one, that are thinking this right now, and I don't think it's the only place.
I think it's overstated. I think in a multi-party system in the United States of America, there are members of the Republican and Democratic Party in the House and the Senate that, despite our divided politics in the United States of America, have been in direct contact with leaders all around the world, making it clear that in the United States and in our democracy, there is no dear leader that sits in a big white building that has all the power in the world. The world is a mess. It's complicated. America makes mistakes like every country in the world makes mistakes. But the brilliance of our founders was to create a durable country with checks and balances on power to ensure that there are governors on all of these mistakes. And we found a way to see ourselves through. Now, I think countries need to make a decision, a couple of decisions. Number one, maybe some countries have relied too much on the United States of America and our benevolence. And they owe it to their own people to do what the United States has done, which is to take personally the responsibility we have for our own nation. And they don't need to rely as much on the United States. Regional countries in various regions of the world. I mean, one of the great lessons of the Trump administration was peace was possible through strength. And one of the motivating factors for the Abraham Accords, for instance, was a recognition that one of the complicating factors of democracy is that our foreign policy does change. And rather than being tethered to a single election in the United States of America, Israel and the UAE and Bahrain and Sudan and Morocco and eventually other countries need to come together and take responsibility for their own region, and take the benevolence and the assistance and the investment and the relationship and friendship with the United States as a value add to their regional ambitions. So, yes, it's a shock to the system. It's a wake-up call that leaders need to take responsibility. But I guarantee there isn't a leader sitting with any honest introspection in any country of the world, however close they are to China, for instance, that would rather, on a day, anywhere in the world, have a serious problem, and they would rather be in the trench with the Chinese versus the United States of America, whatever they say. See, we have to be careful, to not succumb to the propaganda. This is, by the way, what communism is really good at. The communist system, wherever it's been tried in history, eventually crumbles down on itself. And this is the story of COVID-19. Whatever the origins of the virus are and all of these things, that's for other people to decide, and intelligence communities are looking into that and everything. But what is undeniable is that there were early warning signs in Wuhan, and rather than the voices of those whistleblowers being taken by the Chinese government as a blessing so that they could get ahead of this, because the first people to suffer would be the Chinese people, from this pandemic, in order to protect their own image in the world, in order to ensure that they had all power in their own country, they suppressed the voices of those people. They suppressed the voices of those people. This is what always happens with communism. This is the lesson of history. It eventually crumbles down on itself. But what the communists have always been good at is propaganda. They're good at sharing all of these stories around the world and deceiving people and trying to intimidate people and all of these things. And we should be careful not to fall prey to that, because whatever leaders are saying in press conferences and all of these things, it was the Chinese Communist Party whose mishandling of a pandemic infected the entire world. But it was the free world's discovery of vaccines that have saved millions around the world and will save tens and millions more. And I guarantee whatever's being said on press conferences, when it's all said and done, in a moment of honest introspection, many of those leaders around the world, they would much rather be aligned, and their private phone calls will still come to the White House, not to Beijing. But they need to take responsibility for their own countries. I was not against withdrawing from Afghanistan. But we're the United States of America. We don't have forever wars. We don't run other people's governments. What we do is when we withdraw, our withdrawal should be aligned with our values. And unfortunately, and there are a couple of theories as to why it happened. Our withdrawal in Afghanistan did not align with our values and has had unintended consequences. But it doesn't change the big picture. We're still the United States.
Right. And as you're saying, this propaganda by the Chinese regime is really kind of on overdrive right now. I mean, it's almost a kind of gloating of sorts.
Which is weakness, not strength. The United States is a confident country. We hold our leaders to account. What Chinese Communist Party member today is holding the leaders of China to account for their mishandling of a pandemic that killed countless Chinese people? But when it's all said and done, our president and his cabinet and members of Congress in this country, if they mishandled this withdrawal in substantive ways, if this wasn't one of those random acts of history that you couldn't see coming, the people of the United States will know, and the people will hold them to account. And the people holding them to account will do it with small little pieces of paper in ballot boxes in about 18 months. And it'll change. And we'll fix it. But the problem with authoritarian governments around the world, particularly those that suppress human rights and religious freedom, is that those governments aren't self-correcting, and they end up hurting themselves from the inside. I think the United States of America, our humility is part of our strength, and even as the White House, I'm critical of the handling of the catastrophe, in Afghanistan. One of two things happened: either the White House ignored intelligence coming from the intelligence community or advice coming from the State Department. That might have happened. Or in the Department of Defense advising the White House not to withdraw in the way they withdraw. That might have happened. Or it might be that, like we did in 2011, our defense secretary in 2011 had a different job in 2011. One of the things he was responsible for was the withdrawal of our troops from Iraq, which created a vacuum, which led to ISIS, which later on we destroyed. We solved the problem. It may be that our defense secretary, it may be that other people made bad decisions. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm critical of the White House, and the White House is doing everything that they can to try to paint a rosier picture of this situation. Okay, that's fine. That's in their right. They have a job to do. They got to get tens of thousands of Americans and other vulnerable people out. But in the United States of America, we hold these people to account. We don't believe the propaganda. We put pressure on the media in the United States of America, which is statistically democratic. Okay, 80% of the media, provides. Every survey you look at that studies donations, and publicly available data, it's clear. Our media in the United States, they vote Democratic. And yet the media, from CNN to MSNBC and everyone in between, have been unrelenting in their criticism of the president that many of them voted for, because that's the beauty of the United States of America. And this is why things get better, faster here. And this is why we feel a responsibility for fixing problems that we help create.